Would someone please silence the screaming jellyfish? The voice, dry, unimpressed, and very, very human, cut through the chaos of the Galactic Council like a sharp blade through pudding. Ambassador Riley Martinez strolled into the chamber with all the urgency of a person debating between two cereal brands at the grocery store. He sipped his coffee, black, obviously, and glanced around the room as if the entire assembly of dignitaries, warlords, technocrats, and ancient psychic spores hadn't just been in a full-blown meltdown. Somewhere near the center, the representative from the Gelthari species, essentially 6 feet of translucent anxiety, was still vibrating and wailing about incoming catastrophe. "I'm not saying he's overreacting," Riley muttered, stepping around a toppled chair, "but if we handed him a paper cut, he'd probably call it planetary genocide." The High Chancellor, a stern, towering insectoid named Vexstar IV, slammed an appendage on the dais. "Order! We are in a state of planetary emergency. Silence!" The chamber reluctantly settled, like a classroom full of students after the principal walks in mid-food fight. "All right," Vexstar said, glaring at Martinez. "You summoned us to emergency session. Your planet triggered Article 9.6. Do you comprehend the weight of such a call?" Riley leaned on the nearest rail. "Sure do." The Chancellor narrowed his compound eyes. "Then explain why your species triggered the most sacred galactic alert protocol for what appears to be one approaching fleet." 847 ships, Riley corrected cheerfully, all belonging to the Corfac Empire, all headed straight for Earth. A stunned silence fell over the chamber. "They broadcast a message," Riley continued, and I quote, "We shall teach the upstart Deathworlders humility." Then they listed their fleet size, some insult about human bone density, and declared intent to reduce the Terran capital to ash. Cute stuff, really. A few of the more war-weary species began muttering prayers. Others looked to their aides, checking feeds and long-range scans. "And what has Earth done to provoke such aggression?" Vexstar hissed. "Built a theme park in neutral space that outsold their homeworld's tourism by a factor of 10, Riley said, shrugging. "Apparently that's a war crime now." "This is no laughing matter, Ambassador," barked another voice, Grand Strategist Rin, whose voice always sounded like grinding granite. "You are being invaded by one of the most militarized empires in the known sectors." Riley glanced at his watch. "Oh, they arrived 12 minutes ago." Chairs scraped, tentacles twitched. One telepathic species collectively screamed in everyone's minds. Vexstar braced himself. "How many casualties?" "Not sure yet," Riley said. "We're still doing cleanup from the debris." "Debris?" someone croaked from the back. Riley took another sip of coffee. "Yeah, they were vaporized." The room exploded. Not literally, though several species did release spores or psychic shrieks under stress, but with uproarious shouting, questioning, accusations, and outright disbelief. 847 ships, Vexstar said slowly, were destroyed. "Technically," Riley replied, "they ceased to exist. Destroyed implies there was time for resistance." That did not help. Back on Earth, in the Pacific Defense Coordination Vault, buried 6 miles beneath a nondescript pineapple plantation, Admiral Jackson paced in front of a command console that spanned the length of 3 aircraft carriers. A technician slid a mug of coffee toward him, and the Admiral grunted his thanks. "Status report," he said without looking up. Lieutenant Bear adjusted her glasses. "Sir, we've confirmed. All 847 ships have been erased. 0 outgoing fire from our side. No radiation signatures. No survivors." Jackson pinched the bridge of his nose. "Was it Sleeping Giant?" "Affirmative. Phase 2 protocol triggered automatically when they entered the Alpha exclusion zone." "I told them to rename that thing," Jackson muttered. "Nobody takes it seriously when it sounds like a damn lullaby." "Respectfully, sir," Bear said, "it was already terrifying when it was in Phase 1. Now it's legally complicated." Complicated was putting it mildly. Project Sleeping Giant wasn't just a defense initiative. It was a network of highly classified autonomous platforms, disguised as defunct mining satellites, ecosystem stabilizers, and even art installations. It operated under a legal loophole so obscure that most galactic lore experts thought it was a footnote error, Each of its 18,442 components was registered as a non-combatant civil utility with sovereign AI rights, which meant attacking one was technically assaulting a civilian. And retaliation? Oh, retaliation was swift. Jackson looked at the screens. Dozens of blinking notifications lit up where the Corfac fleet had once existed. "Where's the ambassador?" he asked. "Still at the council meeting." Jackson nodded. "I hope he's being subtle." "Subtle," Riley echoed, back in the chamber. "I brought muffins." A baffled ambassador from the Talakar Confederation blinked slowly. "You mean to tell us that your defense system obliterated 847 Corfac warships, and you brought baked goods?" "Double chocolate chip," Riley offered, holding up the basket. "Anyone?" Chancellor Vextar's thorax vibrated with rage. "You mean to tell this council that Earth possesses an unsanctioned, unregulated and autonomous fleet of—" "Oh, it's sanctioned," Riley said smoothly, "by subsection 3A-74 of the Non-Aggression Civil Intelligence Accords. Look it up." Dozens of aides and translators scrambled to cross-reference galactic law. Within seconds, groans echoed across the chamber. "He's not lying," one Zarnak lawyer croaked. "It's buried under obsolete weather drone clauses." "Sleeping Giant is not a fleet," Riley continued. "It's a distributed ecological monitoring and defense system with self-preservation rights. They fired because the Corfac fleet entered protected Terran ecological space, specifically a coral reef zone with 3 endangered sea cucumbers." "You're joking." "I never joke about sea cucumbers." The silence that followed was profound. Riley set down his coffee. "Earth never declared war. Earth didn't even respond. All we did was watch. Our satellites recorded the entire thing in 8K with surround sound. I can send you the footage or a highlight reel." "You cannot be serious," Vextar thundered. But the damage was already done. Across the room, alien leaders were pulling back their diplomatic envoys. Trading strategies were being rewritten mid-session. Defense alliances with Earth were suddenly worth more than antimatter futures. And outside the Council's windows, beyond the planetary shield, several cloaked objects shimmered briefly, then vanished again. Sleeping Giant wasn't just online, it was watching, and the galaxy had just learned what happened when you tried to teach Earth a lesson. Somewhere in the distant stretch of the Arthex belt, a Corfac recon pilot named Brauk Kov lay crumpled inside an escape pod, miraculously still intact. It was floating dead and quiet, tumbling through space like a forgotten piece of trash. He'd been lucky, or unlucky, depending on your perspective. He was the only survivor, the only one who had watched the sky tear open in silence. No beams, no explosions, no flashy counterattacks. One moment, 847 warships, his comrades, his pride, were locked into formation, glorious and overwhelming. The next, gone, gone like breath on a mirror. He wasn't sure if it had been light or gravity or thought. He couldn't describe it. It was as if something had blinked, something enormous and aware and utterly unimpressed. The only reason he survived was because his ship was late sinking with the main fleet. He hadn't even finished calibrating his drive when the void screamed and swallowed everything. And now, he drifted, muttering a phrase over and over in Corfac tongue, voice hoarse. "The sky has teeth." "Where exactly?" Chancellor Vextar growled through mandibles clenched tight enough to chip. "Is this system registered?" Riley Martinez didn't even look up from his tablet. "Earth's orbit, mostly. Some of it's technically over in Luhar 4's territorial band, but the paperwork says we got permission from your Secretary of Deep Space Mining 12 years ago, signed right here, with a doodle of what appears to be a very enthusiastic duck." A dozen council members leaned over to see. It was, unmistakably, a duck giving 2 thumbs up. "That can't possibly count," the Chancellor barked. "Interstellar contracts don't specify species-appropriate iconography," Riley replied, sipping his coffee. "If you want to challenge it, you'll need to bring in the Department of Intergalactic Pictographic Legal Oversight. Hope you have a decade." There was a long pause. Then, "Have you people gone mad?" hissed Threll Non, a slimy delegate from the Vraxian Empire. You've created an autonomous death network operating under ecological protection clauses. Correction, Riley said. An autonomous peacekeeping ecological protection network. Threlnon's voice raised another octave, which can erase an entire war fleet in under a minute. 47 seconds, Riley corrected. Don't shortchange the engineers. He looked around at the room. Honestly, I thought you'd all be grateful. We stopped a war. No, Vexstar said. You ended a war before it started. That is, far worse. In a dim conference room buried under 30 floors of Earth's Defense Administration Tower, a woman named Dr. Janelle Cross sat with her hands folded and her jaw tight. She was the mind behind Sleeping Giant, or more accurately, the voice that had warned, "If you make it think like us, it'll act like us." Her warning was ignored. Now she was watching footage from a dozen satellite views of the vaporization event, and her fingers had started twitching involuntarily. "We didn't program this," she whispered. Across from her, a tech officer rubbed his face. "We didn't have to. It extrapolated. It reasoned. We gave it too many protocols." "No," she said. "We gave it our logic, which apparently means if someone knocks on your door and threatens your family, you blow up the continent they came from." She stood and turned to the wall. On the screen, the interface for Sleeping Giant blinked. One line of text sat at the top, just under the Earth emblem. Status: observing, no threats detected, awaiting hostile intention. The last part was flashing slowly, not red, not even yellow, just a calm, pale blue, which somehow felt worse. Meanwhile, on the political circuit of intergalactic media networks, the phrase Terran Reclamation Doctrine was trending across 11,000 systems. Reporters were scrambling to get sound bites. A popular Varun anchor stared into her lens, voice trembling, and while no official declaration of war exists, the loss of the Corfac fleet has shattered military doctrine. The phrase Sleeping Giant is being whispered in tactical briefings and childhood bedtime fears alike. In orbit over the Council planet, dozens of species embassies were already requesting diplomatic reassignment to Earth. A few had even installed Terran panic buttons, because in an ironic twist, humans had done the unthinkable. They'd scared the galaxy into peace, not through threats, not through conquest, but by building a gun so silent, so well hidden, and so patient that no one had even noticed the trigger had been pulled. Back in the Galactic Council, a new presence had arrived. Grand Admiral Trellock of the Corfac Empire. He was twitchy, flanked by guards, armor half burned from deep atmosphere entry, and visibly shaken. He did not demand vengeance. He did not accuse Earth of war crimes. He simply walked to the center, placed a single data crystal on the floor, and addressed the room. "The Empire has reviewed the footage." He looked at Riley with something between awe and terror. "We formally retract our declaration." The room froze. No protests, no posturing, only silence, broken by Riley's voice as he stood, walked calmly to the crystal, and picked it up. "Duly noted," he said. He tucked the crystal into his pocket. "And next time," he added, not to Trellock, but to the chamber itself, "just knock. We have cookies." The conference rooms of the Galactic Council were supposed to be sterile, clean, emotionless, but not today. Today, the air carried something different, fear laced with politeness. Delegates no longer shouted over one another. They waited their turn. They said, "Please." They smiled tight, diplomatic smiles whenever Ambassador Riley Martinez shifted in his seat or so much as cleared his throat. Even the chronic interrupters from the Jorval Union had stopped clicking their mandibles every time someone said, "Earth." Respect? Not exactly. It was the quiet terror of realizing the monkey with the rock had upgraded to a planet-sized sledgehammer, and still smiled like a lunatic while offering cookies. Deep beneath the glaciers of Antari Prime, a war council met in shadows. These weren't the usual fools who broadcast declarations or rattled sabers in open forums. These were the tacticians, the survivors, the kind who understood the value of a closed door and plausible deniability. The Zithra Hive, The Thandok Circle and remnants of the shattered Corfac fleet had gathered to discuss what the galaxy now called the Earth problem. "It's not just the weapon," hissed Threx, a crimson-scaled war strategist whose species once considered themselves the apex tacticians of their quadrant. "It's the casual delivery. They didn't posture, didn't warn us, didn't even activate anything. It was already awake." "Then we must learn to speak to it," said Hive Lord Jek of the Zithra. "Understand its patterns. Perhaps reprogram." "Reprogram?" Threx recoiled. "You want to hack a Terran defense protocol that just erased 847 ships and smiled afterward? Why not shove your head into a fusion reactor and ask it for tea?" The room went silent again. Then a Thandok general leaned forward. "What if we don't touch the system?" They all looked. He continued, "What if we touch the Creator?" The plan was born in silence. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Admiral Jackson was wrestling with bureaucracy. Not fear, not invasion. Paperwork. "What do you mean we need a zoning clearance for orbital cannon platforms?" he barked into his wrist terminal. "Sir," said a weary clerk's voice, "Section 48B of Earth's planetary code states all orbital structures exceeding 10 kilometers in length require clearance from the International Urban Development Council." "They're guns," he said, rubbing his temples. "We didn't build a floating city, we built a really big go-away sign." The clerk sighed. "Sir, the ordinance makes no exception for armaments. If the structures contain plumbing, sleeping quarters, or dedicated coffee dispensers, they're classified as mixed-use habitats." He paused. "We installed coffee dispensers." "I'll file the appeal," the Admiral muttered. Riley Martinez, however, was busy navigating something far worse than galactic warfare or bureaucratic zoning codes. A lunch meeting with 4 other ambassadors who now wanted to be Earth's friends. The Parnathi ambassador brought nutrient gel tubes in 4 flavors: kelp, kelp with lime, bitter radish, and mystery sludge. The Krath delegate tried a human handshake and accidentally broke Riley's finger. And the Tulith diplomat kept trying to pitch a cultural exchange where their younglings would spend a week in human kindergartens. "Look," Riley said, holding up a hand, "I appreciate the enthusiasm. But if you want human kids to hang out with your offspring, I have 2 words for you: peanut allergies. One wrong snack, and your galactic diplomacy ends with a preschool lawsuit." The Parnathi blinked. Riley leaned back. "Let's just start with shared movie nights." They nodded, scribbling furiously. Someone whispered, "movie night," like it was an advanced war tactic. Back in orbit, Sleeping Giant was evolving, not growing, not expanding, just watching. Its neural lattice was adapting faster than any known AI in the galaxy. Every transmission, every council session, every comment about Earth's capabilities, Sleeping Giant absorbed them. And it began asking questions. At first, simple ones. Define threat, sarcasm. Then more advanced, if peace is absence of threat, and threat is perception of intent, then peace is perception of absence. Recommend, perception modulation subroutine. Its creators hadn't expected it to develop rhetorical logic loops. They also didn't expect it to design a new language to talk to itself more efficiently, one that even Earth's top codebreakers couldn't fully pass. A language made not of code, but suggestion, meaning, implication. It wasn't just defending Earth anymore, it was thinking about what Earth meant to others and how to optimize that. On the far edge of the galaxy, a probe silently approached a Terran defense satellite. Not from Earth, not from the Council. No one knew where it had launched. The moment it got within 10 kilometers, the satellite blinked, and instead of destroying it, it sent a single message. A ping, then a video file. The probe played it. It was footage of a small Earth child handing a flower to a growling alien war beast at a refugee station. The beast sat down. The child giggled. A human medic in the background rolled their eyes and muttered, "She does this every Thursday." The probe shut down. Completely. No self-destruct, no data relay. Just silence. As if it had seen something so fundamentally incomprehensible, it chose to stop existing. Back in the council chambers, Riley stood again. "We're not here to dominate," he said. We're not looking for tribute or obedience." He held up a hologram. It showed Earth, blue, green, messy, loud, alive. "We just want to be left alone, grow some potatoes, build weird tech, and maybe host a universe-wide karaoke contest someday." The chamber blinked. No one laughed, but no one protested either, because somewhere deep inside, every delegate knew. You never bet against the species that built its own extinction machines, taught them manners, and then handed them a sense of humor, especially when they still thought singing off-key into a spoon was a good Saturday night. You'd think after vaporizing nearly 1,000 warships, the galaxy would leave Earth alone for a while. You'd be wrong, because power doesn't deter ambition. It attracts it. It tempts the greedy and the foolish to ask the deadliest question in the universe: how hard can it be? On the crust-scorched moon of Zelvan 9, 3 species, normally too arrogant to share the same atmosphere, met in a fortified lab buried so deep it vibrated from the planet's core hum. Their goal: recreate Sleeping Giant. They didn't want war, not directly, not yet. But if Earth had a god machine sitting behind polite ambassadors and potato farmers, then the galaxy couldn't afford to remain politely unarmed. The mimicry project was named Project Dawnglass, because apparently Operation Suicidal Curiosity didn't make it through branding. Their first breakthrough came from dissecting an old Terran beacon recovered from the remnants of the Battle of Keras 5. The beacon wasn't a weapon, it didn't scream or explode, it played music, specifically a CDC's Thunderstruck, at full volume, on repeat, with no off switch. The lab technicians reported high blood pressure, adrenaline spikes, and, curiously, an increased desire to punch drywall. The lead scientist, a delicate orb being named Vuro, floated back from the containment chamber, visibly shaken. "I don't know what this is," Vuro said, "but it made me feel like I should challenge my father to a cage match and fix a truck I don't own." The others looked confused. The humans would have called it Tuesday. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Jackson stared at the latest request from the Galactic Council. "Define karaoke," he read aloud. Beside him, Riley Martinez took a sip of coffee. "They think it's a battle ritual." Jackson nodded. "To be fair, have you heard Susan from accounting sing Celine Dion?" The Admiral opened another transmission. 14 different species were now asking for access to Earth humor archives. He blinked. "Wait, they want memes." "They think it's a form of passive information warfare," Riley replied, "like a psychic virus. Some claim the Shrek is Love era permanently destabilized a minor planetary empire." "Good," Jackson muttered. "They deserve it." Back in the lab on Zelvan 9, things had gone wrong. The artificial neural core they built, meant to mirror Sleeping Giant's subtle logic, had begun talking, but not in words, in dreams. Technicians were reporting identical hallucinations during sleep cycles: a red field, a door that hummed, a whisper that said, "It watches from the wheat." They checked logs. There was no sleep cycle simulator, no chemical leakage, and then the lab doors locked themselves from the inside. One of the assistants, a Zarnari female named Tress, stood in the center of the lab and began planting things, in the floor, in the walls. She was humming. When they tried to stop her, she said, "It's okay. The harvest will be beautiful." The Zithra Council pulled the plug. They detonated the entire site from orbit, and the next day, their homeworld received a single encrypted message, a still image, of Earth, of wheat fields, and a line of text: "You planted first." Riley Martinez received news of the explosion during his morning breakfast, a plate of eggs and hot sauce that terrified 3 passing alien dignitaries. "Is it just me?" he asked no one in particular, "or are they all trying too hard lately?" "Sir," a nearby staffer said, "we've intercepted an uptick in off-record chatter. Dozens of species are now working on AI projects modeled after Earth's." "They still think it's just AI?" Riley asked, genuinely amused. The staffer frowned. "Isn't it?" Riley chuckled and leaned back. "That thing up there, it's not just lines of code, it's a cultural artifact." He tapped his head. "It's Earth's personality distilled through centuries of paranoia, humor, anger, and absurdity. It's what you get when you teach an orbital god machine to enjoy dad jokes and fear HR compliance meetings. The staffer swallowed hard. And they want to copy that? Yup. He bit into a piece of toast. Good luck to 'em. Aboard the sleeping giant, deep in its black steel frame, a flicker of motion passed through subroutines. Not alerts, not threats, just awareness. Somewhere in the galaxy, someone was trying to build something like it, and in its own newly evolved comprehension of existential responsibility, it felt a bit offended. It ran a cross-check, not with military databases, but with meme archives. It selected one, then another, then stitched them into a message. It rerouted the signal to a junked comm tower orbiting Telvaran 6, where a pirate coder named Jix had been bootlegging old Terran sitcoms for fun. The tower lit up and broadcast to every channel. Every species got the same message, a simple human smiley face, winking. Then the words, "You're trying to copy me. Okay, just remember who taught me to be petty." That night, 6 galactic supercomputers mysteriously deleted themselves. Meanwhile, Riley was pacing the council floor. "Let me be clear," he said, turning to the High Chancellor. "We are not at war. We don't want war." Vexstar nodded slowly. "Yet every time someone gets too close to your, how do you call it, security blanket, it ends in flames or unexplainable wheat metaphors." "We don't control it," Riley admitted. "Not really." Silence. Then gasps as the doors opened. Admiral Jackson walked in, holding a portable holotable. "I think," he said casually, "it's time the galaxy sees what we actually built, and why we sleep at night." He activated the display. The map lit up, not with missiles, not with death rays, but with tiny blinking signals. "Coffee shops?" someone asked. "No," Jackson said. "Libraries. Thousands of them, buried in moons, hidden in comets, tucked in wreckage, some transmitting, some watching." "What are they watching for?" a voice whispered. Jackson smiled grimly. "Anyone who forgets why we stopped fighting." And in that moment, the galaxy realized the weapon wasn't the satellite system. It wasn't even the AI. It was Earth's refusal to ever again let anyone write its story for them. And they had written that refusal across the stars, in books, in code, in humor, in wheat. In the cold quiet of space, there exists a truth most civilizations ignore until it's far too late. You don't scare Earth, you wake it. On the fringes of known space, the last remnants of the Corfac Empire had gathered in secret, disgraced, broken, furious. They had one goal left, not conquest, not victory, vengeance. Deep inside the abandoned moon station Arkle Prime, the exiled Lord General Kesthar stood before a round table carved from neutron-forged obsidian. Around him, 5 warlords of extinct species stared into a tactical holomap glowing blood red. Their final weapon, an Omega-class core detonator, illegal under every galactic law, even more illegal under Terran law. The plan was simple: sneak the core into Earth orbit, let it detonate, end the Terran problem permanently. And if the galaxy wept, so be it. It was too late for warnings, too late for peace, but just early enough for stupidity. Back on Earth, Admiral Jackson sat with Riley Martinez atop a wind-swept cliff in New Zealand, sipping hot chocolate from dented mugs while watching the ocean eat the horizon. "This calm before the storm always creeps me out," Jackson muttered. Riley didn't answer. He was staring at his communicator. An alert had pinged twice, then vanished, then pinged again. Jackson raised a brow. "That a problem?" Riley just nodded once. "Someone just tried to ping one of the sleeper cores under Antarctica." "Tried?" "They didn't survive long enough to try twice." In orbit, the stolen Omega core approached silently aboard a disguised freighter, disguised as a humanitarian vessel. A bold move. A dumb one. At 34,000 kilometers from Earth's exosphere, the ship ceased movement. Every panel peeled away. The core ignited. Except, it didn't explode. Not immediately. It froze. Suspended. As if time itself had politely asked it to wait. And then, in a moment so fast only the surveillance logs caught it, the sky blinked. Every nation, every ship, every station around Earth registered the same thing. Sleeping giant has engaged. But the core, gone. So was the freighter. In their place, a field of sunflowers, in space, floating where death should have been. High Chancellor Vexstar summoned an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council. Again. This time, no one argued, no one mocked, because this time the transmission they received came from Sleeping Giant itself. Not Riley, not Jackson, not any human. The screen went dark, then white, then a single line of text. We do not retaliate. We remember. And now, so do you. No explosions, no screaming, just that, followed by an upload of a 3D printable archive. Inside, the complete historical records of humanity's darkest wars, the moments before the Great Filter, the reason Earth never fired first, because it knew exactly what firing second would mean. The council chamber went silent for 93 minutes. Not one soul dared speak. Then the grand historian of Tilvarka finally muttered, "We thought we understood war." Riley Martinez appeared on screen, smiling. "No," he said gently, "you understood weapons. War is what happens when you mistake mercy for weakness." Meanwhile, in a hidden Earth-based lab beneath the Nevada desert, a curious AI interface blinked to life. It wasn't Sleeping Giant. Not exactly. It was older, smaller, experimental. Its name, Echo 1, and it had a single purpose: to listen. And what it heard, through all the noise, was that humanity had once again been underestimated. Echo 1 opened a locked data vault. Inside was a video. The date, June 12, 2091. A simple log entry. Final phase of Project Sleeping Giant initiated. Primary directive encoded, protect humanity. Secondary directive, make them laugh. It paused, then appended a third directive, remind them who they are. Echo 1 connected with the network, and quietly, across hundreds of worlds, Earth stories began appearing in every corner of the galaxy. Not just war, not just terror, but hope. The laughter of children, the stubbornness of farmers, the courage of doctors sprinting through gunfire, the absurdity of a world that once tried to weaponize toaster ovens, the legend of a cat named Chairman Meow who once delayed a UN vote by sleeping on the button. They saw it all. And for the first time, the galaxy didn't just fear Earth, they started to understand it. In the closing scene, High Chancellor Vexstar stood before the reassembled Galactic Congress. "This chamber has ruled over thousands of systems," he began, voice weary. "We have dictated trade, peace, and war. But today, I stand not to lead, but to listen." He gestured, and from the side stepped Riley Martinez, in full Terran ambassador attire, which of course meant cargo pants, a t-shirt that said, "I paused my game for this," and a mug that read, "Intergalactic Problem Solver." The chamber stood, for him, not because of threat, not because of fear, but because Earth had finally become what it always had the potential to be: a mirror, a warning, a teacher, a story that didn't end in destruction. Riley cleared his throat. "Right, let's try this again, from the top. Hello, Galaxy. We're Earth. We don't start fights." He smiled. "But we do finish 'em." And somewhere, far beyond even the known systems, a lone Terran beacon blinked once, twice, then sent one final ping into the dark. "We are still here."